Okay, hello everybody. Thanks again for watching another one of these short little videos that the branch is putting together to help members keep up to date with the USS dispute. So in the GM on Wednesday, a member asked if I could answer a question about leg 2 by making a video, which I'm happy to do. Leg 2 is a phrase you'll have heard if you attended the Vice-Chancellor's meeting on Tuesday, where Andy Stevens, the Chief Finance Officer, and I were having a discussion about what Leg 2 is and whether it's how that interacts with the resolution of the dispute, or might with possible resolutions of the dispute. So what is Leg 2? Well, USS has costed 2 sets of contribution rates for the next few years, depending on what the benefits are. So Leg 1, what they call Leg 1, is the contribution rates associated with the UUK proposals. So you'll remember that the UUK proposals involve an enormous cut to your benefits, which you can calculate now. You can calculate it, well, either through the UCU modeler or through the official USS modeler by logging into the USS consultation website. And those cuts to your benefits will cost you a little bit more. They will cost you 9.8% of your salary. They will cost our employers 21.4%, making a total of 31.2%. And that cost stays the same forever, or until there's a new valuation. So that's Leg 1. So if the UUK proposals are successfully forced through, that's the rates we'll be paying. USS has helpfully calculated what they call Leg 2, which is the cost of retaining existing benefits. And what's interesting about this is they have decided to stagger the contribution increases on the assumption. So this is under the assumption that the UUK proposals will be withdrawn and nothing else happens. And that second bit is important because that's the crux of the disagreement between Andy and myself about how plausible and desirable Leg 2 is. So you can see that we're in Leg 2 at the moment in the sense that the contribution rates between October and April are the same as in Leg 1. So if the UUK proposals are withdrawn and nothing else happens, then in April the contribution rates will go up to 11% for members, 23.7% for employers, and 34.7% in total. And then again, if nothing happens, in October they'll go up again to a combined 40, and then they'll ramp up all the way up to 57% by October 2025. And Andy's point in the meeting on Tuesday was he was very opposed to Leg 2 because 57% contribution rates are unaffordable to both members and employers. And of course he's right about that. In one sense, he's right about that. In another, he's very wrong about that. So in the sense that 57% contribution rates are unaffordable, of course that's correct and no one would want that. And the union certainly would not support asking members to pay 18.8% of their salary. Or indeed, in my view, I think anything above this figure really is, in the long term, is unacceptable. So the question then is, why would the union want Leg 2 to happen? And the answer to that is because it would force another solution. So suppose we moved into Leg 2, then in April, there's not enough time to avoid these contribution rises in April, but there would be enough time to avoid the October 2022 increases and then all of the subsequent ones. So all of these figures here from October 22 all the way downwards are really straw man figures. No one thinks they're going to come about because they're unaffordable for everybody. So something would happen to avoid those, and we would hope it would be a new valuation, a moderately prudent valuation that would show a surplus in the scheme and obviously that requires USS to behave themselves. But that's, I hope, the best case scenario. An alternative would be some kind of cost sharing between members and employers, which would be a much worse scenario, but still better than Leg 1. Okay, so then really all we should think about is that section of the table, because that is the section that is the union would like to happen. I mean, wouldn't like it to happen, but that's the best case scenario now, given where we are. And that question then becomes, is that affordable? So that subsection of that, two sub-questions, is it affordable for employers? So can employers afford to pay that rate? And is it affordable or a good deal for members to pay that rate to retain existing benefits? So the employer case is really simple because employers have all budgeted for that contribution rate under the 2018 valuation for this financial year anyway. So employers are able to pay that. We know that because they've budgeted to do that for the whole year, and indeed under this proposal they'd only be doing that for half a year. They'd only be doing it for 6 months. So employers are fine. This figure, I agree, would be a struggle for employers, which is why it wouldn't happen. But this figure they can afford. What about members? So obviously it's undesirable for members to have to pay 6 months of additional contributions at 11% rather than 9.8%. To retain existing benefits. But is that a good deal? You know, the union thinks we should all do that. Is that a good deal? And you can answer that question by looking at what that buys you. So this graph is by some work that my counterparts Jackie Grant at Sussex and Mike Otsuka at LSE have put together. And it answers this question really, would paying 11% for 6 months be worth it? So we would be retaining existing benefits for 11% contributions instead of 9.8%. So the difference, well, I mean, the answer to this question depends on who you are and what your salary is, of course. So this is just an example of a 40-year-old person who earns £40,000. For that person, the additional contributions they would be paying for that 6 months would be £240. So the union would be saying, look, we think the best case scenario for you is to pay an extra £240 to retain existing benefits compared to the UUK proposals. So, of course, an extra £240 would buy you a better accrual rate and a better inflation cap. So the difference between this blue line and the orange line is the difference between existing benefits for that 6 months and the UUK proposed benefits for that 6 months. So there's already a difference at the start because the existing benefits have a better accrual rate. So that £240 extra would buy you more pension accrual to start with. And because of the inflation cap, that would be protected over time. The value of that would go up in real terms over the years. This graph assumes that inflation is going to be an average of 2.5%. This is using USS figures that UUK have agreed to because they form the basis of the USS consultation. So no one can argue with these figures. Now, obviously, when inflation is an average of 2.5% and there's a 2.5% cap, in some years inflation will be above the cap and you'll lose a little bit. Some years it will be below and you won't. And USS has modelled that and says on average that leads to a 0.5% decline in the value of your pension every year. Okay, so let's imagine you're this 40-year-old. If you don't go into leg 2 and you don't pay that additional £240, then you're on this orange trajectory, and the value of your pension starts for that 6 month. The value of your pension you buy for that 6 month period starts off lower and declines over time because of this this inflation cap. By the time you take your pension in age 66, it's down here, and it keeps getting lower in retirement as well. Suppose you die after 20 years, so you die at the age of 86. What's the total difference? It's shown by this region here. So that additional £240 that you would spend next year would buy you an additional £1,500 in retirement, which is a very, very good deal. And that figure, of course, would be higher if inflation is higher, because this line would go down here somewhere. So the higher long-term inflation is, and most people think it's projected to be higher than that over the next 10 years, this area gets bigger and that deal becomes even better. So if we go back to this graph, what I'm saying to you is, although it's obviously very annoying and unreasonable to expect members to pay 11% for 6 months because of this flawed valuation we've spoken about so often, it is nevertheless a good deal to do that for massively better benefits. So the union's position is we should ask the UK to withdraw their proposals, which would move us into here. We should be willing to pay this slightly higher contributions for 6 months, and that time would buy enough time, if there's goodwill on all sides, which is a very big if, to have a new valuation or resolve the dispute through negotiation, so that these increases here don't happen. And that would, I'm absolutely confident that no one wants that to happen. So there's no reason to discuss these figures, as Andy was so worried about, because there's just no way that they're going to be allowed to be happening by anybody. So this is total straw man territory, especially down here. I mean, that's insane. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. I will stop there. Thanks again for watching.